Oi, gente. Olá, todos. I'm Gabriela Watson-Burkett, your co-host, and welcome to episode 7.
¿Qué tal, mi gente? I'm Vicky Diaz-Camacho, your other co-host. Let's get started with what's on our radar. And we are back. How was your summer?
Oh, it was great. I'm so sad it's coming to an end.
I mean, the heat's not coming to an end, so at least we have the heat.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And speaking of, I know that you have an important report that you wanted to share that's on your radar, right?
One of the beats that we cover at Intimedia, as you know, it's maternal care.
Yeah.
And we recently republished an article from the organization Moms Clean Air Force. And the article is entitled, "We Didn't Know How Climate Change and Air Pollution Are Silently Endangering Maternal Health." And it really resonated with what we're discussing about environment and how it affects all of us, more specifically Black and brown women expecting child.
Yes.
Right. So this one was written by Almeta E. Cooper. She is a national manager for health justice, and Liz Hurtado. She is a national field manager at Moms Clean Air Force. One thing that caught my attention from the article is a pregnant woman who has preeclampsia, and this is a condition that affects a lot of Black and brown women, and she was just traumatized by the fact that the doctors didn't advise her that exposure to air pollution and extreme heat might have contributed to her condition.
Wow. And we also learned that the air pollution here in Philly is really bad, right? So these are all contributing to what we saw in that report.
Yes,
Wow,
absolutely. So please go to our website, intimedia.org, to read more. And Vicky, what's on your radar?
So many things. I would say that for me, it's been my previous work, which, has focused on health inequities across the city and how wealth and poverty looks across various communities and demographics. And Philly, we know, has a storied past of racial segregation, wealth segregation as well. But how that plays out in daily life and the well-being of our communities, right? Like that for me has been kind of haunting me because you see life expectancy, it differs from the North versus the South. And so how do we bridge those gaps of care and need? So that's been really concerning to me because you see it through home ownership, but you also see it in, medical care. You see it with food deserts, maternal health care, right? So we just know that there's this vast need and the gaps are widening. So who is going to step up to the plate and fix it?
Yes, that's a serious concern for us. And it relates to the topic of the show today.
It does.
Right? Talking about economic justice, generational wealth, how to redistribute more equitable. When we look at the median wealth broken down by racial demographics, Black and Latino homeowners fare the worst, telling in at $9,000 and $14,000 median wealth respectively. Across racial lines, wealth has been increasing among Black households. That's a win. But Brookings also found that at the same time, the racial wealth gaps are widening.
The way wealth and poverty are distributed in Philly has not gotten any better, according to illuminating data by Pew and Brookings Institute. And conversely, Pew's State of the City report shows that about 12.5% of white non-Hispanic Philadelphia residents lived in poverty, whereas 26% of Hispanic residents, 24.5% of Black residents, and 19% of Asian residents lived in poverty. The issue is compounded by other social issues, such as disparities in arrests and charges, especially here in Philly. Philadelphia had the highest incarceration rate of any large jurisdiction in the country. Also, immigration raids are increasingly hurting Philly's communities of color, putting families at risk of eviction because it's lowering household incomes if key earners are arrested or deported, not to mention the negative impact on their psychological and physical health.
In the studio today, we have Allyson Budschalow, a longtime organizer with decades of experience in grassroots fundraising and resource mobilization. She is a co-founder of Securing the Roots, a project focused on building people power through resource mobilization and reclamation. She also works with Dragonfly Partners. Well, Allison is a proud Philadelphian and member of the Kalmyk Mongol diaspora. She brings a deep commitment to justice, community, and collective power. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you, first and foremost, for inviting me on, y'all.
Also joining us is Imrul Mazid, the co-founder of Philly Muslim Freedom Fund, a bail fund that raises funds for Muslims who are incarcerated. Imrul was an educator in schools and nonprofits for 13 years. He has an MS in nonprofit leadership from the School of Social Policy and Practice at UPenn and an MA in sociology and education from Teachers College, Columbia University. He's also an emerging documentary filmmaker and the co-founder of Runners for Justice in Palestine.
Let's start talking about family. I love to hear about your background, your family history, and how you got to Philadelphia. Allison, can you get started?
I am a part of the Kalmyk Mongolian diaspora, and so I'm going to give a little history lesson because I'm certain that a lot of people don't know what the Kalmyk Mongols or who the Kalmyk Mongols are. We are descended from Mongolians. My family, though, probably wasn't in Mongolia since the 1700s. They settled in a part of Russia that is called Kalmykia, and we still have relatives there. But my great-grandparents, who were born in Russia, fled during the revolution by way of Turkey. They stayed there for a little while, and then they went to other parts of Europe, and they settled in Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, France, Germany, and Yugoslavia. My grandparents were born in both France and Yugoslavia. During the end of World War II, we were all kind of rounded up and gathered together as a group of people who were Asian and not of the Aryan race. And so what do you do with all of these people? Some folks were sent to different kinds of camps, and ultimately, at the end of World War II, everybody was put into a displaced persons camp. So that's where my father was born. That's where my grandparents met. My mother was the first person in our ethnic group who was born in the United States. She was born in Maryland. So what do you do when you're an immigrant and you're born in Maryland? Well, everybody tells you to name your child Mary. So my mom is named Mary. And then I was born and raised here in Philly. So that's the kind of quick of my migration story, my family story.
Thanks.
Yeah, first, peace and blessings. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. I trace my ancestral origins to South Asia in the more recent generations. My parents immigrated from Bangladesh to Canada in the mid-'70s. I was born in Canada, and then we moved to Northern California when I was in grade 7, as Canadians would say. Yeah, when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so ethnically I'm Bengali.
Nice.
Interesting.
And then you came to Philly, what?
It's
How many
been, I
years
can't
ago?
believe it's been almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so August will be 7 years, moved here from Oakland, California.
No, I love hearing the backstories and how that comes to influence what you do and why you do what you do. So let's talk about economic justice and what that means to each of you and how you define that work. And we can start with you, Allison.
I probably would start back to growing up in Philly in Northern Liberties. I'm someone who actually did grow up in Northern Liberties. And during that era in the 1980s and 90s, economic justice looked like carrying all the grocery bags, the plastic bags, like one on each finger from the different corner stores or the different markets, because there wasn't, like smaller markets, there wasn't a supermarket nearby. Now, if you drive through Northern Liberties and other parts where we didn't used to have supermarkets, there are tons of them, and people probably have lots of parking and easy access to go in and out. We didn't have that when I was growing up. Economic justice also looked like, knowing stories of kind of connected with your work, like everybody trying to get money together if somebody was caught up in the law and had to get a lawyer, and family members kind of throwing in for that, whoever could. And I just remember this weird vignette of like my uncle carrying all the money in a brown paper bag and sticking in there, and me being like, "Why'd you put it in a brown paper bag?" And him being like, "Because nobody's gonna steal a brown paper bag." And I was like, "Oh,
Smart.
okay." So that's one element, I think, of economic justice. And then beyond that too, it's about whether or not someone is able to find their own home, their own place to be, where they can not only have like shelter and the safety and security that provides, but also where they can then have that be their launching point for access to other things like education, like healthcare, and other things that every human being needs unequivocally. So
Powerful. Thank you.
I'm going to list, what it isn't. I know what it isn't, right? Chinatown is a couple blocks over this way. I know that it's not the upward redistribution of wealth and resources, subsidizing corporations and developers, billionaires who want to build arenas right here, displacing thousands of people. That's not an economically just situation, right? What is just is when people fight back and organize and stop that. So that's not an economically just situation where the public is subsidizing billionaires.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, when I think about economic justice, I just go through the very straightforward, like, how can we make this a just war, right? And for me, it goes back to like salaries, equity in salaries, gender, racial equity, and it seems so far from it, right?
Still to this day, yes.
Yes. How are you guys feeling in terms of inequalities? What has been something that you guys have observing that is most widening in the recent years?
For me, moving to Philadelphia, there was push and pull factors. And one of the things that we were observing, San Francisco, wealth inequality, the Gini coefficient or however they measure it, is something like Bolivia or a Latin American country. The gap between the rich and the poor has grown substantially. Yeah. And, we're observing that everywhere. But the results of that are playing out on the streets, for example. When you have like 30-year-old tech bro millionaires like running around, and then you got people with 3 like barely living wage jobs, $18 an hour. That's not going to get you, in California, barely surviving. So, yeah.
Year over year, we hear that Philadelphia, it's again the most poor major city. And there's really not anything that has been put in place from a lot of different perspectives in the city, whether it's the city's budget, whatever the state can do, that has helped us to shift that. What we have seen are glimmers of hope, though, with people power, like Chinatown being able to stave off another takeover and removal of, not only them from the space, but also erasure of history and their stories and their mark on the history of our city.
Yeah.
Right.
It's harder to close.
It is. But like you said, there's people power and there's movements and organizations cropping up. And so let's talk about those pushes for the solution, right? I know both of you work in those spaces. So tell me, how are you trying to bridge that gap?
Yes. Well, so Securing the Roots is a program that I co-founded with a friend and another consultant in the field, Britt Campese. And we started it for the same reason that we continue to run cohorts of organizers now, where we are trying to scale up and build the capacity of organizers mostly it started out being only in Philly or in the Philadelphia area, and now we've run our first cohort that was a national cohort. But what we're doing is we're bringing together a dozen organizers from different organizations who are trying to build the power of their communities toward their different visions of the world that all are toward the end of a just world, a just community. We've also encouraged folks to think of resources as the folks who are part of their membership, part of their communities, their families, and also the skills and talents that we all bring to the table, in addition to the money to keep the lights on, right? And so we have had a lot of folks who have benefited from learning how to increase their individual donors, really concrete things like that, or increase their grants, their funding streams, diversify their funding streams, all of that. But even more so, I think we've helped people shift the way that they relate to money and how they relate to seeing it as another tool, and not, really the thing that's going to make or break the work that they're doing, the critical work that they're doing.
Nice. Thank you.
In Philly Muslim Freedom Fund, we're a small bail fund. Our mission is to uplift Muslims oppressed by the carceral state. We're pillared on 3 different main foundational elements: community fundraising, political education, as well as prisoner solidarity. So all our programming is centered around that. We're increasingly working really closely with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund and hosted bond for 12 Black mothers and caregivers. And we're still raising a little bit of money, so that's one of the ways that we redistribute wealth.
That's amazing.
And by we, I say that Philly Muslim Freedom Fund has uplifted the campaign. It is a campaign of the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund.
And I really wanted to hear more from both of you. Is there a way that we can redistribute generational wealth more equitable?
I got to shout out my co-founder, Abbas Naqvi. There's a whole team, there's whole communities of people that have uplifted this project. So I'm by no means a representative of the organization. But at the earliest phases, one of the things that we dreamed of and envisioned is that redistribution of wealth, right? If we look at, Muslim communities in that sort of post-1965 wave, my parents, for example, who are disproportionately white-collar professionals, many such folks have now retired. They've accumulated a lot of wealth. They want to do something with it here, but they don't necessarily know where to put the dollars, and end up still sending it overseas to the village, dig a well, or, you know what I'm saying, bring electricity to the village. But we need electricity right here, right? Some of our communities here don't look that different from Bangladesh. Let's be real. This isn't drawing from like a banking model of anything. This isn't transactional in nature, the work that we're doing. And that includes the moving of the dollars. The dollars are always tied to a conversation. It's tied to political education, and with a long run view in mind.
I do a lot of work around funder and donor organizing as well. And in that work, there's a lot of folks individuals, who are connected with institutions as well, but who are trying to do something with their wealth. They're trying to redistribute it. They're trying to not have it change over from one generation to the next in their own families as it has always done. And it's with the framing of that money being ours, right? It's come from the labor of people who look like us, maybe some of our ancestors, our relatives. It's come at the cost of our children's future, right? Because it's totally off the exploitation of the natural world. And so thinking about it with more of a wealth reclamation framework is something that I want to shout out my folks who I roll with, the crews who I roll with. So WRAP, Wealth Reclamation Academy of Practitioners, that's Vero's organization, if you remember Vero. So they have a beautiful framework about reclaiming our wealth, the wealth that we all have access to. And that's where it takes that definition of resources I was talking about a step further to say that that's what it is. When we're tapping into this understanding that our relationship with money can be different, that usually helps us to connect with our own power, right? And that's something that we're trying to reclaim as human beings, as people who are working together towards something that is not centering wealth, money as we know it, right?
I love that. I mean, I think, and part of what both of you are doing, it sounds to me, especially when you mention political education is a piece of that community building, right? It's empowering people with information so that they know what they maybe don't have access to. So how do we make that sustainable over time? Have you thought about that? I'd love to hear from both of you.
There's protection in numbers, right? We have been very, very intentional over the course of 4 to 5 years, building relationships very intentionally. Abolition School, for example, shout out everybody Abolition School, all the cohorts. A lot of the inspiration for this, a lot of what keeps me moving is what we learned in those spaces. That activated my qalb, that's Arabic for heart.
Just thinking about that pedagogical piece of really bringing folks the information that they don't have access to, because we know why they don't have access to it. And we know, well, we don't know what's possible actually when folks do have access to it. And so that's what we're looking for, right? In all the work that we do in securing the roots, with other clients that I work with in the consulting world, with other people that I come across in other areas of work too. It's knowing all the information that is kept from us.
Yeah. How can we see those resources that we don't see as a community, and also going back to our ancestrality?
I think there's something that I think about a lot. It's always food-based, which I think a lot of us can probably relate to, where my people have moved over many centuries, and something that we've kept are two basic foods that actually are part of every ritual that we have. And one is this kind of fried bread or dough called bortsik, and then another one, which is our tea, and it's kalmikta, that means Kalmyk tea. But it's really, it's something that has been consistent over generations, centuries, over many, many countries and many people. And that is something that just no one can take from me, whether they try really hard, they can't take it from me. It's something I carry with me, and I know that carries immense power that probably not everyone can tap into or kind of access. And that is that reclamation of the ancestral wealth, which helps me, I'm tearing up, but which helps me to then access the other forms of wealth. It kind of takes the blinders off, the blinders of capitalism, where I'm oh, I've got all these folks sitting next to me, right? Where you, I think, knew somebody from Abolition School who tapped me, and then I knew Gabriela from Securing the Roots. We are our own best resources. Right. And so that's what I think something that we continue to try and talk about in Securing the Roots is being able to tap into those inner resources and reconnect with that, because we've all been alienated so much from ourselves, and then also to connect with and tap into the resource that is, our community, our folks across the country, our folks in other communities, our folks back home from, where we came from, to really to see and remember that is powerful. That is powerful. We're learning so much and remembering so much from, our ancestors' struggles against fascist governments and regimes. It's immense, the lessons that we have.
But there's so much that's not quantifiable.
That's right.
Right? Wealth, we can measure it in dollars, but there's a component that no machine can measure it. Right? The wealth of our knowledge, let's say. Yeah. The impact, I'm deliberately using the language of the nonprofit industrial complex, of our organization, of Philly Muslim Freedom Fund. Our impact is far outsized relative to the number of organizers. We don't have staff, we're all volunteers. Everybody knows the Pigs Are Haram t-shirt. If you roll through West Philly, everybody knows that shirt, which is one of our fundraising vehicles. But there's a political, educational piece that's embodied within the artwork itself, that builds a density of networks and camaraderie. We center, in terms of ancestors, Baba Maroon, Russell Maroon Schultz is central to our origin story, as well as Mama Aisha El Mekki. She's the matriarch of our organization. Got to shout out all our Black elders and that paved and excavated the pathway, for us. I wouldn't be treading this, but for people like Mama Aisha, and so many more.
I just wanted to hear a little bit more from Imrul. Like, why is it important to frame it through the Muslim lens, right? Because there are other programs that are similar.
Right.
But here in Philadelphia, this is significant.
Yeah, Philadelphia is 10 to 15% Muslim. There's, Pew estimates suggest about 200,000 Muslims here. That's a lot of Muslims. Not only is this a lot of deep poverty in this city, right, below 200% of the federal poverty line, there's a lot of Muslims in this city. We're primarily Black Americans, but just from the African diaspora period, right, in Southwest Philly, for example. In that sense, like the structure of the Muslim diasporic populations here, it looks a little different from, let's say, California, where I'm from. Yeah, that's really important, and we recognized a niche and a need to meet the needs of our community members, and that informs how we move as well. But we got to move money across communities. In that post-1965 cohort of immigrants that I was talking about earlier, a lot of South Asians, Arabs, SWANA folks, you know what I mean, to use the acronym, those, like, let's say from Iran, have accumulated a lot of wealth. And we got to move that where it's most needed.
Interesting that you bring that international perspective too, right? Because wealth is not only here in New York or in downtown, but it's even in Brazil, right? Where people associate with the global South, right? Or third world country, that I hate those terms. But there's so much concentration of wealth in South America. Like, people own islands. So it's everywhere. It's really a global mentality that needs to be shifted.
But maybe the greatest wealth in terms of people resources is in the favelas, right? Maybe it's in the slums. Maybe it's in the so-called bad lands, the good lands. You know what I mean? So if we start to invert that paradigm, we start to think of it a little bit differently. And as a Muslim, since your previous question was about Islam, like earlier, Allison, you talked about the way that wealth is even accumulated, right? It's inherently exploitative, right? Whether it's the exploitation of labor and human beings to derive surplus, right? Or it's the exploitation of land and natural resources. As a Muslim, we are obligated to purify our wealth. So there's a 2.5% sort of tax. It's called zakat. Almsgiving, maybe in more broader spiritual traditions. We're required to transfer those dollars. So part of the question here is, how do we divert those dollars towards bringing more people home from State Road? And our brothers and sisters and our siblings over at Believers Bailout in Chicago, they've been doing it, right? We want to do it in our own kind of way here in Philadelphia because we're Philly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys would like to share about your organization or hope for the future?
Oh, hope for the future. I have so many. I really hope that you all continue having many seasons of this show and whatever comes from it, whatever comes next. And yeah, let's free them all.
Free them all. Free them all. I hope for that. I hope to continue working with you and to continue nourishing these relationships. Very grateful. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
You made me tear up because just thinking about, what we can learn from our ancestors and the resilience that is built through that practice, right? And forging these strong connections. I mean, this is why we're all here today. So I want to thank you both so much for everything that you've shared. I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart without crying.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us today. Catch up on the latest at ntmedia.org or find more Diálogos episodes on Spotify and YouTube.
And if you enjoyed our last few episodes, reshare, comment, and tag us on social. It's @News by Inti Media. Gracias and ashe.
Nos vemos.